So I remember at one point you said that you wanted to become a werewolf. So here's a story on how somebody becomes one. This one's called Wolf.
I just want to say I think it sucks.
It's about fucking time, sir.
So on a full moon night, this guy Will Randall's driving through the snowy mountains that have been nicely plowed. But he comes to the woods where his defroster gives up on him, and he hits a dog.
That butthole.
The plow must have stopped right before there too, because hitting the dog causes him to spin. He gets out to check on the dog, but realizes it's a wolf, and pokes it with a stick.
Goddamn stick!
But it's playing possum, and waits for him to get closer so it can bite him.
Good boy.
He then sees it's not alone, so he gets the hell out of there.
One of these days, I'm gonna have a stick of my own.
He goes to work the next morning, where he expects his secretary to have ESP.
What time is my doctor's appointment?
I had no idea you had one.
He finds out that his boss is throwing a party tonight to let everyone know who he plans on firing. But Will's got a bunch of friends that'll quit if he gets fired, including this guy Stewart Swenton.
I know they don't want to lose him.
At the Fire Everybody party, we find out that Will is quite the party pooper.
We're exhausted.
His boss waits until they serve dinner to talk to Will face to face, so that's not a good sign. He takes him outside, far enough away from the party that no one would hear him yell, and tells him he wants him to move to Russia, or he can retire.
Old guy, huh?
He then gives him a cigar, and then leads him to his horses that don't like the smell. So I guess that was his way of getting rid of him. The horses all go nuts.
I can smell it.
So he runs into some bushes.
My diagnosis is that you've experienced a severe anxiety attack.
He then runs into Mr. Alden's daughter, Laura, who helps his mini heart attack with some scotch. And he gets drunk really fast and touches her boobs.
I'm married.
And that makes you perfectly safe?
Yes.
And then heads back into the party. He goes to his wife and Stewart and congratulates Stewart on getting his job as editor-in-chief, even though Stewart was the director of marketing, which wouldn't have the experience for that position.
What? Alden said that?
Well, how did he know that he got his job?
Well, Mr. Alden said that the person who replaced him was begging for his job, and he's the biggest butt kisser he knows.
You are such a polished ass kisser, it takes my breath away.
Stewart denies that he knew he was getting it, and on the way home, Will's wife calls him a pansy for not calling him out on it.
Why did you let him walk away with your blessing, guilt-free?
He goes home and sleeps for like 20 hours, and then starts acting like a dog.
I begged.
He goes to work, and all of his senses are getting better.
How the fuck can you drink tequila this early?
And so now you can see without your glasses.
I mean, I put a drop of tequila in my coffee this morning.
I guess having hairy palms is a small price to pay for that.
Taking form of a giant spectral dog is among the darkest omens in our world. It's an omen of death.
So after picking on Gary, he needs his help to find an author that can tell him if he's being possessed by an animal, and then makes him feel like he's stalking him.
I like watching you sleep. It's kind of fascinating to me.
He goes home to smell his wife's clothes and knows that she's been cheating on him with Stewart. He goes over to catch them and ends up biting Stewart.
You animal.
And running up the stairs to confront her.
So she probably knew that Stewart was going to get his job, too.
Yeah, and then talk crap about him, all the while she's hooking up with him so she doesn't have to move to Russia.
We create our own demons.
The next day, Will goes to Stewart's office, where Stewart begs him not to be mad.
Please. Don't.
But Will wants revenge instead. He then goes to Mr. Alden's house to tell him he doesn't want to move to Russia, and then smells his daughter.
The blood appeals to you so much. It makes me thirsty.
Now that he's homeless, jobless, and wifeless, he thinks he has a shot with a rich girl half his age.
She'll be my sugar mama.
But he freaks her horse out again, and she gets thrown to the ground. And she's like, dude, what is it with you and horses?
So are you an idiot?
She uses him to get out of a lunch she doesn't want to go to, but he takes her up on her fake invitation, and now she has to go to another lunch she doesn't want to go to. And wow, does he trim the pants off her.
Problem is that aside from all that beauty, you're not very interesting.
Since she's not interested, they talk about dead relatives and the fact that he might be becoming a werewolf.
Sorry. Wrong line.
But this interests her, and she invites him to dinner, but he gets sick, and she has to take care of his old ass right after he said,
I feel just so great, more alive, stronger.
But she thinks he might die in his sleep, so she leaves.
Maybe I shouldn't be dating such an old man. It's gross.
He wakes up with yellow eyes and mutton chops and jumps out the window.
He's an animagus.
An animagus is a wizard who elects to turn into an animal. A werewolf has no choice.
He finds a deer, chases it down on foot, and kills it.
Dat butthole.
I didn't like the food. All that red, rare meat dripping blood.
In the morning, he wakes up covered in blood and runs back to his car to go to the doctor. His doctor is worried.
You could have brain damage, you idiot.
But he says he feels great, even though he felt like crap the night before. He then goes to work, where his boss wants to see him, and he tells him that he can keep his job because he didn't know he was a professional bastard.
How the fuck did you know?
Why does he think he's a bastard?
Well, he plans on stealing all their best-selling authors and starting his own company, but he stupidly does this before coming up with any money to do this.
How many investors do we have?
I don't know. I haven't called anybody yet.
Being writers, they're too goddamn stupid to know it.
But the bluff works.
See? I told you. They were all idiots.
The author of the animal possession book calls him back, and he goes to see Mr. Alizaeus.
He's Dr. Alizaeus.
And he thinks he's becoming a wolf, and Will's like, okay. But the doctor has a necklace that will keep him from turning into a wolf as long as he never takes it off. So he would never know if he was really going to turn into one if he wears it.
If it works, there is said to be a great pain and weakness.
The doctor also says that the wolf keeps the traits of the human.
The demon wolf is not evil, unless the man he's bitten is evil.
So it's kind of like the super soldier serum in Captain America.
Good becomes great. Bad becomes worse.
But just in case this myth isn't a whole bunch of crap, the doctor wants him to bite him, but he won't do it. But the doctor says, hey, I'll be here if you change your mind. And I guess Will doesn't believe him because he doesn't even bother putting the damn thing on. He calls Laura to tell her about him waking up covered in blood, and then he charms her into going on a date with him.
I had an accident, goddammit.
I'll be at your hotel tomorrow evening at 6.
Later that night, he wolfs out again and goes to the zoo. And all the animals are so upset by his presence that the animals he would most likely eat get as close as possible to him. The cops try to arrest him, but he just slowly jumps away from them.
My monkey man.
Pick up my cuffs.
He then goes and attacks some people in the park. The next morning, he gets his job back and celebrates by peeing on Stewart. And then he fires him, even though he knew Alden wanted to keep him on board and was just using him as leverage to keep his job.
I taught him to do that.
Stewart cleans up the pee off his shoes and then leaves without washing his hands. But Will does wash his hands after he pees, but finds some dude's fingers in his pocket and just leaves them in the sink for someone to find. And this is an executive doing this. Imagine how the regular employees treat the bathroom.
I'm just marking my territory.
I want that to be your area.
He goes back to his hotel to find his wife waiting in the lobby. And since he was meeting Laura at 6 and she's in the lobby too, that means he did a full day of work after knowing that he ripped somebody's fingers off the night before.
I don't have the courage to be jobless at my age.
He tells her to go to hell, but doesn't realize that Laura was watching.
You caught that, huh?
He goes up to the room and puts his anti-wolf necklace on. I guess he doesn't like finding fingers everywhere.
An exploration in depth of why women cut off their husband's penis.
Laura's banging on the door, but he won't let her in. So she bribes a maid to open it, and she goes in to find him handcuffed to the radiator. Well, he thinks he's a danger to her and others, so she picks the lock, but just cuffs his wrists behind his back, and they go to bed.
Whatever you think is going to happen isn't.
You didn't actually enjoy that, did you?
At some point, she must have taken the cuffs back off, because while he's in wolf mode, he puts his suit and shoes back on, and then goes back to the park to howl at the moon, and then undressed and went back to bed. And the amulet must not have worked, because he's still wearing it in the morning.
You got that big, white, wrinkly body on top of you with his loose skin and old balls. Gross.
Two detectives show up to the room in the morning to question Will about his wife, who was murdered in the park. Laura doesn't think that he could have done it, but then she sees too much mud on his shoes for walking all day, and changes her mind.
Okay, well, let's say for argument's sake that I'm not smart.
He wants her to lock him up, and she's like, okay. But first she needs to take a call from the cops, where they tell her that Charlotte was killed by a dog. So she locks him up with the horses, who are all scared shitless of him, and she goes to see the cops. When she gets there, Stewart is there, acting all creepy.
What an interesting scent you have, Selma. At once new and familiar, very familiar.
Oh, yes, I've had some smelly ones before.
She notices his yellow eyes, but you have to wonder why his wolf self would go talk to the cops.
What a very odd question. What made you ask such a question?
But now she thinks Stewart did it and rushes back to get Will and take him somewhere safer. Stewart realizes she's onto him and heads to her house.
Hey, Stinky, let's get going. You got us in trouble.
He gets through the gate
Smooth talk to the guard.
and then attacks the security guard.
How did we get this shift?
Laura goes to find Will, but Stewart finds her first. It seems that he killed Charlotte so he can get Will's job back.
You vindictive son of a bitch.
And now he wants to attack Laura, so Will takes his jewelry off and fights Stewart.
I'm gonna get you, Stewart.
They fight in slow motion to some smooth jazz. But Laura puts an end to that by shooting Stewart.
You come in contact with the criminal element of society, and, well, you pick up shit.
Werewolf Will goes to thank her and then runs into the woods. He rips off his clothes and fully becomes a real wolf. The cops show up and she tells him that Will was going to the airport. And then she walks away with super senses and yellow eyes.
Did either of them bite her?
Nope. Becoming a wolf apparently comes from any bodily fluid. But now you know how wolves make other wolves, not through breeding, but through biting random people, or, the other thing.
I would like a favor from you.
If it's in my power.
I would like you to subscribe.
You're my god.